Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Within the pages of Harry Potter, one can find countless hidden details and subtle clues that foreshadow future events. At first reading, they may seem random or insignificant, but upon returning to the books, they reveal an entirely new layer of meaning. Today, let's go through the most fascinating examples. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Ron and Neville's magical failures. In the early books, it seemed that Ron and Neville were simply weak wizards. Ron struggled even with the simplest spells, and Neville was known as the clumsiest student in his year. But the real reason wasn't their magical ability. Remember the rule: the wand chooses the wizard. While Ron was using his brother Charlie's old wand and Neville had inherited his father's, their magic was weak and unstable. Only after receiving their own wands did they begin to reveal their true strength and talent. Number 2. The key to the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic is the very symbol of power and secrecy in the wizarding world, supposedly the most secure place in Britain. Yet students managed to sneak in more than once. One method was the famous phone booth, where the code 62442 had to be dialed. At first glance, it looks like random numbers, but on an old telephone keypad, those digits spell out magic, too perfect to be accidental. Number 3. Harry and Ron predict the Triwizard Tournament. Harry and Ron treated divination as a joke, often making up predictions at random. But some of their jokes turned out to be strikingly accurate. Danger of getting burned. The first task with the dragon. Losing something valuable. The second task, where Ron was taken from Harry. A stab in the back from a friend. The betrayal of Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Mad-Eye Moody. Their silly notes ended up being true prophecies. Number 4. Snape could read minds. As early as the first book, Harry and Ron suspected that Professor Snape could read minds. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than childish fantasy and fear of a strict teacher. But in Order of the Phoenix, the truth came out. Snape was indeed a skilled legilimate, able to penetrate another's thoughts. The children's paranoia was actually a foreshadowing. Number 5. The broken sneakoscope. For Harry's birthday, Ron gave him a sneakoscope. The device spun non-stop, as though constantly detecting danger, and the boys dismissed it as defective. But the sneakoscope was flawless. It was pointing to a constant threat right beside them. Peter Pettigrew had been hiding for years in the form of the rat scabbers. Number 6. The Dark Lord's hint. In the Riddle House, the Dark Lord remarked to Pettigrew that many of his followers would give their right hand for the privilege of serving his plans. Later, this became literal foreshadowing. In the ritual to restore Voldemort, Pettigrew actually sacrificed his right hand. Number 7. A piece of the Dark Lord inside Harry. Professor Trelawney was often dismissed as foolish, her words sounding absurd. Once, she declared that Harry had been born in the middle of winter. A mistake, surely, since Harry's birthday was in July. But in the final book, the truth was revealed. Harry was a horcrux, carrying a piece of Voldemort's soul. And Tom Riddle was born on December 31st, at the very heart of winter. Perhaps Trelawney was sensing that dark essence inside Harry rather than his actual birthday. Number 8. The book The Tales of Beedle the Bard. When Dumbledore leaves Hermione. The Tales of Beedle the Bard in the Deathly Hallows, it seems almost absurd. Ron gets a deluminator, Harry gets the snitch, but Hermione, a brilliant witch with shelves of books, receives a children's story. At first, even she doubts its value, but hidden in its pages is The Tale of the Three Brothers, a legend that reveals the Deathly Hallows. Without this clue, the trio would never have understood the symbols, nor the true nature of the objects Voldemort and Dumbledore both sought. Hermione is the one who deciphers it. She reads aloud. Then Death handed over his own cloak of invisibility, and they all went their separate ways. For Harry, it is a story with eerie familiarity. His cloak matches the description perfectly, What once looked like an ordinary fairy tale becomes a prophecy of their quest. Dumbledore trusted Hermione to find meaning where others would dismiss it. The book was never a trinket. It was the hidden map that led them to the heart of the final war. Number 9. The magical chess game. In the Philosopher's Stone, the giant chessboard is more than a trial of logic. It is a stage where Ron Weasley shows who he truly is. Faced with living pieces that smash and strike, Ron takes command. His voice is steady. We're going to have to be chessmen. He positions Harry and Hermione as bishop and rook, keeping himself as knight. The strategy is clear, but so is the danger. To win, someone must fall. Ron accepts the role without hesitation. When the White Queen crashes her stone arm onto his piece, Ron collapses. Harry shouts in horror, but Ron has already done what was needed. His sacrifice clears the way for Harry to advance to the final chamber. This is not only bravery, it is foreshadowing. Again and again through the series, Ron will put himself at risk to protect his friends. From standing by Harry in the Forbidden Forest to abandoning his safety during the Horcrux hunt, he repeats the same pattern. The chessboard was the first warning that Ron's loyalty would demand pain. The symbolism is powerful. 3 children step onto the board, but they are not children anymore. They are pieces in a larger game. Harry will be the king who must face Voldemort, Hermione the mind who charts the moves, and Ron the knight who throws himself forward when no one else can. Victory is not about a single hero, but the sacrifice of all 3. The chess game is remembered as spectacle, but hidden inside it is the truth of the saga. Friendship wins where power alone cannot. Number 10. The portrait in Madame Malkin's shop. In the Philosopher's Stone, Harry steps into Madame Malkin's robe shop for the very first time. There he meets Draco Malfoy, the boy who will become both rival and reflection. Rowling adds a tiny detail. A portrait on the wall, a wizard in mauve robes, who was watching them with great interest. The line is brief, easy to overlook, but the image of an artist silently observing the boys is striking. From the start, their meeting is not private. It feels judged, recorded, as if history itself is already watching. That first conversation between Harry and Draco sets the tone for years to come. Draco sneers at Hagrid, questions Ron's family, and offers Harry his hand. Harry refuses, choosing his friends instead of wealth. The painter's watchful eye above them mirrors the weight of this choice. "I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks," Harry says. It is a moment of defiance that will echo through the series. The unseen observer on the wall underscores that this is not a casual meeting. It is the beginning of a rivalry fated to unfold under constant scrutiny. As the years pass, Draco becomes more than an antagonist. He mirrors Harry's doubts, his temptations, his struggles with identity. Others are always watching them, teachers, Death Eaters, even Voldemort himself. That early portrait is a quiet symbol of this truth. 2 boys stand in a shop, their paths diverging, yet an unseen gaze ties them together. The artist on the wall foreshadows what readers will learn much later. Harry and Draco are not just enemies. They are 2 sides of the same story, destined to reflect one another until the very end. Number 11. The symbolism of the Phoenix. In the Chamber of Secrets, Fawkes, the Phoenix descends into the battle when all hope seems lost. Harry lies poisoned by the basilisk's fang, fading fast. Then the bird weeps. Rowling describes how thick, pearly tears trickle down onto Harry's wound. The venom that should have killed him is purged, and he rises again. At first, it feels like a lucky rescue. Yet the symbolism is unmistakable. A phoenix dies only to be reborn, and Harry has just lived through his first death and resurrection. This moment echoes throughout the series. When Dumbledore speaks of phoenixes, he notes their cycles of burning and renewal. Fawkes himself bursts into flames in Dumbledore's office, leaving only ashes and a frail chick. "He'll be fine. Dumbledore tells a horrified Harry. The scene is light, almost humorous, but it plants the image of survival through destruction. What looks like an ending is only a transformation. For Harry, the lesson is hidden, waiting to bloom in the final book. The connection becomes clearer in the Deathly Hallows. In the Forbidden Forest, Harry walks willingly to his death. Voldemort strikes and Harry falls. Yet he wakes again, alive when he should not be. He has become the Phoenix himself, passing through fire and returning renewed. The path was foreshadowed years earlier when Fawkes sang in the chamber, his cry filling Harry with courage. The Phoenix's gift was never just tears, it was the reminder that life can rise again from ashes. Rowling threads this imagery with care. The bird that healed Harry in his second year was not just Dumbledore's companion. Fawkes was a prophecy in feathers, a mirror of the boy's fate. Readers may miss it on the first journey through the books, but on the second the message is clear. Harry Potter would not only fight the Dark Lord, like the Phoenix he would die in flame and be reborn to finish the war. Number 12, a small detail about horcruxes in the diary. In the Chamber of Secrets, the diary of Tom Riddle first seems like just another enchanted object. It writes back when Ginny pours her heart into its pages, and Harry quickly realizes it can answer him in writing. For a young reader, this feels like a clever, magical invention. But there is something unsettling in how alive the diary feels. It does not merely reflect thoughts, it speaks with its own will. The object already breaks the rules of ordinary magic, and Rowling plants the clue early. This is no simple book. The diary manipulates Ginny with chilling precision. It draws her deeper each time she confides in it, feeding on her secrets and emotions. Riddle himself boasts to Harry, "Ginny poured out her soul to me, and her soul happened to be exactly what I wanted." The language here is not accidental. He speaks of stealing life itself, not just controlling a mind. Readers at first treat it as a haunting piece of dark magic, but in truth, it is our very first encounter with a horcrux, an object carrying a fragment of Voldemort's soul. Harry's battle in the chamber shows just how different this diary is from other cursed objects. When he stabs it with the basilisk fang, the response is explosive. Ink gushes from its pages like blood, and Riddle screams as his form dissolves. Rowling paints the moment with violent imagery that mirrors death itself. The destruction of the diary is not just the end of a possession, it is the destruction of part of Voldemort's soul. This is the prototype of everything Harry will face later in the war. Looking back, the clues are almost too clear. An object that speaks, thinks, and fights for survival should have raised suspicions. But only in the Half-Blood Prince does Dumbledore explain that the diary was proof Voldemort had split his soul long before. Harry had unknowingly destroyed his first Horcrux years earlier. The serpent's fang, the scream of Tom Riddle, the bleeding pages, all of it foreshadowed the dangerous quest that would define the final book. Number 13, Dumbledore's Mysterious Age. When Hagrid introduces Dumbledore in the Philosopher's Stone, he calls him the greatest wizard of modern times. It sounds like a simple praise, a title given to a wise headmaster. Yet Rowling never gives us his age, never tells us when he was born. He simply exists ancient and untouchable, as though time bends around him. For a child reader, this silence passes unnoticed. But when the larger story unfolds, Dumbledore's true timeline becomes startling. Later, Rowling revealed in interviews and companion works that Albus Dumbledore was born in 1881. That means he was more than a century old when Harry met him, walking the halls of Hogwarts with calm grace. In the Philosopher's Stone, he already felt older than the school itself, but knowing the exact year transforms him into something different. He is not just a mentor figure. He is a witness of eras, someone who lived through the rise and fall of Grindelwald, the global wizarding war, and the shifting tides of the magical world. The text itself hints at this ageless quality. When Harry first sees Dumbledore, Rowling describes his long silver hair and beard, half-moon spectacles, and his crooked nose. This is not the portrait of a middle-aged man, but of someone who has carried the weight of centuries. Even his words feel older than time. To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure, Dumbledore tells Harry. The line is not the voice of a teacher, it is the voice of someone who has stood close to death many times and learned to speak of it without fear. By holding back his true age in the early books, Rowling planted the idea that Dumbledore was more than human. He became a mystery, a figure who seemed eternal. Only much later did readers discover the exact year of his birth, and by then the effect was complete. Dumbledore stood not as a man bound to one lifetime, but as a keeper of hidden history, carrying secrets that stretched far beyond Harry's story. Number 14. Sirius's suspicious transformations. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius Black first appears not as a man, but as a dog lurking in the shadows. Rowling writes of the enormous pale-eyed dog seen by Harry on Magnolia Crescent. At first it feels like a simple scare, an omen of danger, yet this dog never attacks, it only watches. For a reader going through the story for the first time, the presence of the animal is frightening, but on a second reading the pattern is clear. The dog is not a predator but a guardian, keeping his distance yet always near when Harry faces real peril. Consider the night bus scene. Harry runs away from Privet Drive, furious and lost. He stumbles in the dark, nearly struck by the night bus, and who was watching from the shadows? The same great black dog. Sirius was there, close enough to intervene if the boy was in danger, but never stepping out to harm him. The encounter feels ominous on first read, but in hindsight it is almost paternal. Sirius making sure Harry was not alone. The Quidditch match provides another clue. During the fierce storm, Harry sees the black dog again, this time in the stands. Harry was sure he saw something moving, a huge dog, watching him. The scene builds dread. Readers are meant to think the Grim has come to take Harry's life, yet nothing follows. The dog vanishes. If Sirius truly meant harm, that moment when Harry was distracted and vulnerable would have been the perfect chance. Instead, Sirius only observes. His presence signals concern, not violence. By the time the truth is revealed, the earlier moments fall into place. The dog was not a monster, nor a symbol of death. It was Sirius circling his godson, desperate to protect him even when everyone else believed him guilty. Rowling carefully scattered these hints so that when we look back, we see the pattern she painted. Sirius was never the hunter, he was the shield. Number 15. Neville and the Remembrall. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, one of the earliest objects to carry hidden weight is something so small and seemingly insignificant that most readers dismiss it almost instantly: Neville Longbottom's Remembrall. This glass ball, given to him by his formidable grandmother, glows red when the owner has forgotten something. When Neville first holds it in his hands during flying lessons, it immediately begins to glow. The only problem, Neville admits with a nervous laugh, is that I can't remember what I've forgotten. The moment plays out as comic relief, a detail that builds Neville's clumsy, forgetful image in the eyes of Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the reader. Yet when revisited after completing the series, the Remembrall scene can be seen as one of Rowling's most subtle pieces of foreshadowing. Neville had forgotten something important, not a trivial task or object, but rather his own inner strength, the heroic role that destiny had carved out for him long before he was old enough to understand it. When the Remembrall glows in his hands, Neville blushes, embarrassed by his own incompetence. Madam Hooch and the other students laugh, while Harry notices Malfoy snatch it away moments later, sparking Harry's first daring flight on a broomstick. The entire sequence is so full of action and discovery that readers hardly pause to reflect on the symbolism of Neville's forgetfulness. The humour of the scene masks the deeper truth. Neville is a boy who has forgotten not just small day-to-day details, but also the weight of his heritage and the quiet strength buried within him. It is not a coincidence that the Remembrall glows the very first time we see him with it, as though to signal that the greatest thing Neville has misplaced is his own courage. At this stage in the story, Neville is portrayed as a child constantly overshadowed by others. He loses his toad Trevor more times than anyone can count, struggles with even the simplest spells, and consistently scores low in class. Neville was in tears after 5 minutes, Rowling writes during their first potions lesson with Professor Snape. He seems doomed to occupy the role of comic relief, a foil to Harry's natural bravery and Hermione's intellect, but the Remembrall's quiet glow stands as an early hint that there is more to him than clumsiness. He does not yet remember who he truly is. The theme of forgetting and remembering runs through Neville's entire arc. His very name carries a heavy burden of memory. He is the child of Frank and Alice Longbottom, both Aurors who were tortured into insanity by Death Eaters. They live in St. Mungo's Hospital, unable to recognize their own son. For Neville, memory is not just a personal struggle, but a generational wound. He grows up in the shadow of parents who cannot acknowledge him, raised by a strict grandmother who constantly reminds him of the family expectations he fails to meet. The Remembrall scene almost feels cruel in this light. A boy who has already inherited such tragedy is being laughed at for failing to recall what he has forgotten. Yet Rowling embeds a truth here. Neville's forgetfulness is not mere comedy, but a metaphor for suppressed identity. When readers reach Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the depth of Neville's character begins to unfold. In the climactic battle at the Department of Mysteries, Neville fights bravely beside Harry despite sustaining a broken nose and struggling with spells that falter under pressure. Harry reflects that Neville refuses to give up, even when wandless, clutching Hermione's wand with shaking hands and shouting hexes that barely leave his lips. The boy who once could not remember what he had forgotten now refuses to let go of the fight, even when every part of his body urges surrender. The glowing Remembrall of his childhood becomes almost prophetic, as though it had been whispering to him all along that he had forgotten the warrior sleeping inside. The symbolism becomes even sharper in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Neville is not part of the central hunt for horcruxes, yet he continues to train, fight, and resist Voldemort's forces within Hogwarts itself. It is easy to overlook these contributions in the shadow of Harry, Ron, and Hermione's perilous journey. But Neville's strength, though quieter, is no less vital. His gradual transformation reveals that the Remembrall was not mocking him, but preparing him. It was as if fate itself placed in his palm a glowing reminder that memory and courage are bound together, that to be truly strong, he must reclaim what was lost. The final revelation of Neville's arc arrives in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. As the Battle of Hogwarts rages and chaos engulfs every corner of the castle, Neville stands before Voldemort with defiance in his voice. The boy who once trembled before Snape now declares his loyalty to Harry, even when he believes Harry to be dead. "I'll join you when hell freezes over," he tells Voldemort, and he does so without hesitation. It is in this very moment that the Remembrall symbolism crystallizes. Neville has finally remembered what he had forgotten all those years ago, that he is not destined to live in the shadow of greater heroes, but to stand among them as an equal. Well, the act that cements his transformation is unforgettable. Neville draws the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat and strikes Nagini, Voldemort's final horcrux. With one decisive swing, he alters the course of the war. The Remembrall that once glowed in his hand no longer needs to remind him. He has fully remembered his courage, his role, his destiny. This action is the culmination of a journey seeded back in that first flying lesson. Readers who laughed at Neville's forgetfulness now see the profound truth hidden in that early scene. He had not forgotten his homework or a trivial item, but his true self. Number 16, the scar as a prophecy. Harry's lightning-shaped scar is introduced in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone almost casually, a curious mark that made him famous in the wizarding world, but to him was nothing more than a reminder of the night his parents were killed. Yet from the earliest pages the scar holds a deeper function than readers may first realize. The moment Hagrid tells baby Harry's story, the scar becomes a symbol of survival, but Rowling quietly planted the idea that it was also a warning system, a thread connecting Harry to Voldemort. Many readers glossed over this, assuming it was simply a physical mark left by a powerful curse. Only with a second or third reading do the breadcrumbs appear, showing how Rowling signaled that this scar was more than ornament, it was prophecy etched into flesh. The first significant clue arrives in Philosopher's Stone when Harry experiences sharp pain in his scar while watching Professor Quirrell during the Sorting Hat ceremony. At that time, neither Harry nor the reader knows Voldemort is sharing Quirrell's body. Rowling frames the moment simply. The pain he had felt in his forehead came back. He put his hand to his scar at once. To a first-time reader, this seems like nervous tension, or perhaps Harry reacting to Quirrell's strange stutter. But rereading with hindsight, this moment is the first clear sign that the scar was never passive. It is reactive, almost alive, responding to Voldemort's nearness like a divining rod pointing toward danger. Rowling concealed this within the bustle of a school scene, but it is a masterstroke of foreshadowing. Later that same year, in the Forbidden Forest, Harry encounters a hooded figure drinking unicorn blood. As the creature lifts its head, a pain like he had never felt before pierced his head. Again, it is the scar burning, screaming at him in Voldemort's presence. At the time, readers may have thought this was simple dramatic effect. Rowling, using pain to show Harry is in peril, but the fact that it happens consistently only when Voldemort is nearby signals something much larger. Harry's body itself has been made into an early warning prophecy. Every throb is not only danger, but destiny whispering through the scar. Rowling deepens this connection in Chamber of Secrets. When Harry hears voices in the walls, "Kill! Kill! Time to kill!" Ron and Hermione cannot hear them. It is the scar's hidden purpose again, amplifying the echoes of Voldemort's spirit through the diary of Tom Riddle. Dumbledore later tells Harry, "You can speak Parseltongue because Lord Voldemort, who is the last remaining ancestor of Salazar Slytherin, can speak Parseltongue." That gift itself is another shard of the prophecy contained in the scar. Readers originally saw this as a useful ability, but paired with the constant pains it forms a pattern. The scar is not random. It is Voldemort's fragment carved into Harry, shaping not only his future battles, but his very identity. One of the most telling examples comes in Goblet of Fire. Harry's scar begins hurting more frequently, often in dreams. The pain in his scar was worse than ever, and Harry found himself on his knees in his dormitory. At this point, Voldemort has not yet returned to full form, but Harry is already experiencing visions of the Dark Lord's plotting. This is no ordinary wound reacting to stress. It is a channel transmitting glimpses of the enemy's plans. Rowling could have made Harry's nightmares generic, but she chose to lace them with actual events from Voldemort's perspective. It is as though the scar is a cursed prophecy, warning Harry of what is to come, while binding him irrevocably to his foe. Dumbledore himself acknowledges the scar's true significance in Order of the Phoenix. After Voldemort possesses Harry at the Ministry of Magic, Dumbledore explains, "In the end, it mattered not that you could close your mind, it was your heart that saved you." The scar has been the medium of possession, but it is also the battleground where Harry's love and Voldemort's hatred collide. By this point, the scar is no longer just an alert system. It has become a stage for prophecy itself, showing that Harry's fate will be determined through this connection. Dumbledore calls Harry the one with the power the Dark Lord knows not, and the scar is the physical manifestation of that prophecy. It connects them, but it also provides the means for Harry to resist. The prophetic role of the scar becomes most poignant in Half-Blood Prince. Dumbledore takes Harry through the pensive to explore Voldemort's past, and at crucial moments Harry feels his scar prickling, as though Voldemort's memory is not just history, but a living presence inside him. When Harry watches Voldemort demand a teaching position from Dumbledore, Rowling notes, Harry's scar prickled, his hatred of Dumbledore temporarily vanishing under the onslaught of his burning desire to hurt the man. This is no mere reminder of pain, it is a prophecy in action. The scar predicts Harry will face not only Voldemort's strength but his influence. The boy must learn to master himself, not just fight the Dark Lord, and the scar delivers that lesson in every sharp stab of pain. The ultimate revelation comes in Deathly Hallows when the truth of the horcruxes is laid bare. Harry's scar is not just a wound, but the housing of a piece of Voldemort's soul. Dumbledore's words echo, "You were the horcrux he never meant to make." This knowledge reframes every moment of pain since Harry's childhood. The scar was never incidental. It was the thread of prophecy binding two destinies, marking Harry as the one who must die so the other may live. Every time it burned, the universe was whispering the future, that Harry's fate and Voldemort's would be resolved together, and neither could truly exist while the other survived. Number 17, Arthur Weasley's warning about objects that think. Of all the lines that slip through the early pages of Harry Potter, few seem as inconsequential as Arthur Weasley's warning in the Chamber of Secrets. Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain. It is a father's offhand remark, a bit of guidance to his curious daughter who has fallen under the sway of a mysterious diary. Yet as the story unfolds across 7 books, that single statement reveals itself as a buried key, a foreshadowing of the greatest secret at the heart of Voldemort's power. What at first sounds like parental common sense becomes, on rereading, a disguised thesis for the struggle against horcruxes, the enchanted vessels that carried pieces of Voldemort's fractured soul. Arthur Weasley, without knowing it, laid down the very rule that Harry, Ron, and Hermione would rely upon in the final chapters of their fight. The power of Arthur's warning lies in its simplicity. He speaks not as a scholar of dark magic, but as a man who has seen how enchanted objects can warp the ordinary. His work in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office makes him alert to items that should not be trusted. The diary that Ginny finds in the Chamber of Secrets is precisely such an object, something that writes back, thinks independently, and manipulates its owner. At the time, readers like Ginny are more concerned with the danger of a hidden chamber than with the larger implications of a book that holds a fragment of consciousness. But the idea lingers, objects that think for themselves may harbour something far more sinister than clever spells. The diary of Tom Riddle becomes the first glimpse into the mechanics of horcruxes, though the word itself will not be uttered for several more years. In that book, the diary speaks with a voice, forms sentences, and even shows moving memories of the past. It seduces Ginny into trusting it and uses her to open the Chamber of Secrets. When Harry finally destroys it, with the basilisk fang, it is not simply a magical notebook that dies. It is a shard of Voldemort's soul, shrieking as it is annihilated. Arthur's words echo in that moment. He had warned against trusting objects that seemed to think for themselves, but no one, not even Dumbledore at the time, explains why the diary behaved that way. The explanation would only come much later, when the truth of horcruxes emerges. This is where rereading transforms Arthur's line into prophecy. Every horcrux embodies the danger he describes. The locket stolen from the cave whispers into the minds of those who carry it, feeding their insecurities. The cup of Helga Hufflepuff reacts violently to intrusion and even tries to defend itself when confronted. The diadem of Ravenclaw fills Harry's thoughts with whispers in the room of requirement. Even Nagini, living and breathing, shows the same qualities. An independent will bound to Voldemort, yet dangerous in her own right. Each of these objects not only thinks but seeks to corrupt or protect itself. Arthur's casual warning captures their essence perfectly. Consider the locket, perhaps the most dramatic example of Arthur's principle. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione carry the locket in the Deathly Hallows, it infects them with suspicion and despair. Ron, in particular, feels the venom of its influence, convinced that Harry and Hermione no longer need him. The locket has no visible brain, but it clearly thinks, and it thinks with malice. When Ron finally returns to destroy it, the horcrux conjures visions to torment him, an image of Harry and Hermione together, a mockery designed to break his spirit. This is not the behavior of a neutral object. It is the logic of something with a mind of its own. Arthur's words echo across the years. Such things must never be trusted. The diadem of Ravenclaw provides another telling illustration. When Harry encounters it in the Room of Requirement, it seems inert, nothing more than a lost relic. Yet it burns with an inner voice, a whisper of temptation, as though it knows it has been discovered and seeks to preserve itself. The fact that it can think without speech reveals the insidious nature of horcruxes. They do not merely sit in silence. They wait, they plan, they respond. They are fragments of a consciousness that continues to seek survival. Arthur's early suspicion about independent objects becomes, in hindsight, a warning that encompasses the diadem as surely as it did the diary. Nagini, the final horcrux, appears at first to be only a loyal snake. Yet her connection to Voldemort is deeper than simple companionship. She is a vessel for his soul, and she obeys him with a chilling intelligence. She guards, she attacks strategically, and she even lures prey by disguise in Bathilda Bagshot's corpse. A snake should not have the ability to plot in such calculated ways, but Nagini does. Again, Arthur's principle holds. Creatures or objects that act with minds not their own cannot be trusted, for something darker animates them. Number 18, Dumbledore's words about Slytherin. In the early chapters of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the reader is swept into a world of magic, wonder, and mystery. Harry is only 11, uncertain of his identity, his place at Hogwarts, and what it means that he has survived Voldemort's attack as a baby. One of the most pivotal, yet easy to overlook, narrative moments occurs not in a grand duel or revelation, but in a quiet conversation with Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore tells Harry that it is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. At first glance, the phrase feels like a simple reassurance to a nervous boy. But behind those words lies one of the most important thematic threads of the entire saga, and one that connects directly to the shadow of Slytherin. Rowling planted here, almost invisibly, the key that unlocks the moral arc of the series. It is not about blood, it is not about the powers you inherit, but the decisions you make in the face of temptation. This lesson first emerges when Harry is sorted into Gryffindor, though he very nearly becomes a Slytherin. The sorting hat warns him that he has qualities Salazar Slytherin would admire: resourcefulness, determination, and ambition. The hat even insists, you could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, there's no doubt about that. Yet Harry resists, whispering, almost desperately, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. The hat eventually respects his plea and places him in Gryffindor. At 11, Harry has no understanding of why this moment matters, but Rowling ensures the reader does not forget it. The seed is planted. Slytherin is not merely a house, but a question of allegiance, morality, and destiny. When Dumbledore later echoes this theme, he subtly ties Harry's fate to this moment, hinting that the choice to reject Slytherin is far more consequential than Harry realizes. The brilliance of Rowling's storytelling lies in misdirection. In the first book, the reader interprets Dumbledore's words as kind advice, almost like a grandfather calming a child's fears. But by the end of the saga, those same words stand as a prophetic key. Voldemort-born Tom Riddle also once sat beneath the sorting hat. He did not resist Slytherin, but embraced it. where Harry hesitated and ultimately chose differently, Voldemort surrendered to his nature, to his ambition, and to the heritage of Salazar Slytherin. Two boys, both orphans, both marked by pain, both capable of greatness, were divided by one essential difference: the choice to follow light or darkness. Dumbledore's reminder that bloodlines do not dictate fate is not simply a moral platitude. It is a narrative clue that the entire struggle will culminate in Harry rejecting the part of Voldemort that lives within him. The presence of Voldemort's soul within Harry magnifies this theme. When the young wizard begins to suspect that something inside him connects him to Slytherin, his fears deepen. He speaks Parseltongue, the snake language associated with Salazar himself, and others begin to wonder if Harry could be the heir of Slytherin. In Chamber of Secrets, the issue becomes central. Dumbledore once again reinforces the point when he tells Harry, "You happen to have many qualities Salazar Slytherin prized in his hand-picked students. His own very rare gift, Parseltongue, resourcefulness, determination, a certain disregard for rules, yet the Sorting Hat placed you in Gryffindor. You know why that was. Think." Harry realizes that the choice he made to reject Slytherin defined him more than any gift he carried. The earlier conversation in Philosopher's Stone is suddenly charged with deeper meaning. Rowling had already laid the groundwork. The story simply circles back to it. By the time the series approaches its climax, the philosophical remark Dumbledore made in Harry's first year blooms into its full significance. Voldemort is obsessed with blood purity, heritage, and destiny. He believes his descent from Salazar Slytherin and his mastery of magic make him invincible. But Harry, who also carries Slytherin's traits by accident, contradicts this ideology. He chooses compassion over cruelty, sacrifice over domination. When Voldemort sneers that Harry is weak because he values love and friendship, he fails to understand that these are not weaknesses but the strength born from choice. The earlier words of Dumbledore reveal themselves as the author's thesis. Bloodlines and inherited power do not determine victory. Choice, the deliberate rejection of darkness, is what saves Harry and defeats Voldemort. The subtlety of this narrative device is easy to overlook when first reading Philosopher's Stone. Young readers especially are likely to focus on the excitement of trolls, Quidditch matches, and the mystery of Nicholas Flamel. Dumbledore's comment about choices feels like a pause in the action, a teacher's lesson inserted between adventures, but Rowling ensures that what seems like a pause is in truth a signal. It is as if she whispers to the attentive reader, "Remember this. It will matter later." And indeed it becomes the lens through which to interpret not only Harry's story, but the tragedy of Tom Riddle as well. Voldemort was brilliant, talented, and powerful, qualities the Sorting Hat admired in Harry too. But Voldemort lacked the courage to choose differently, to resist the call of Slytherin's darker legacy. Dumbledore's quiet reminder is the author's warning that ability alone is not destiny. The moral complexity of Slytherin House reinforces this point. Throughout the series, Slytherin is cast as the antagonist's domain. Draco Malfoy, Severus Snape, and of course, Voldemort himself. Yet Rowling never reduces it to a caricature. Severus Snape, the quintessential Slytherin, ultimately reveals himself as one of the bravest characters in the story, his life defined by loyalty and sacrifice. Horace Slughorn, another Slytherin, values ambition and connections, but also demonstrates kindness and courage in crucial moments. Harry's own son, Albus Severus Potter, is eventually sorted into Slytherin in The Cursed Child, where the narrative insists again that Slytherin is not inherently evil. The fact that Dumbledore plants this idea so early in the saga shows Rowling's deliberate effort to challenge the reader's assumptions. Harry's choice is framed not as a rejection of Slytherin's worth, but as a decision about his own path. One of the most haunting reflections of this theme occurs in Order of the Phoenix. Harry begins to doubt himself after his visions connect him to Voldemort's mind. He fears he is becoming more like the Dark Lord than he admits. He wonders if being in Gryffindor was a mistake, if perhaps Slytherin would have suited him after all. Once again, Dumbledore steps in, not by lecturing, but by embodying the theme. He entrusts Harry with knowledge, reminds him of his capacity for love, and reinforces the idea that what defines him is not the connection to Voldemort, but the choices he makes in response to that connection. The foreshadowing from the first book echoes here like a refrain, reminding both Harry and the reader of the lesson first spoken so quietly in the headmaster's office. By the final confrontation in the Great Hall during Deathly Hallows, the arc comes full circle. Voldemort has cast aside every human bond in pursuit of immortality and domination. He believes that killing Harry will secure his place as the ultimate heir of Slytherin, but Harry, who has accepted his connection to Voldemort and chosen to embrace sacrifice, embodies Dumbledore's words. The difference between them is not talent or heritage, they are both extraordinary wizards, but choice. Harry walks willingly into death, trusting in the power of love and friendship, while Voldemort cowers behind horcruxes. When the Elder Wand turns against its master, the logic of the story is complete. Bloodlines crumble, ambition falters, and what remains is the truth, first whispered to an 11-year-old boy. Our choices define us. The literary craftsmanship of this device deserves attention. Rowling does not declare at the climax that Harry's victory lies in his choices. She has already said it in Book 1, but disguised it as comforting wisdom. By doing so, she invites the reader to grow alongside Harry. The words are simple enough for a child to accept, but profound enough for an adult to revisit and see anew. Like a spell that reveals its full effect only after years of patience, the phrase resonates more with every reread. In this way, the narrative rewards attentiveness. Those who noticed the emphasis on choice in Philosopher's Stone find themselves rewarded with the recognition of how deeply it ties the series together. It is worth remembering that Dumbledore himself embodies this philosophy. His own backstory, revealed in Deathly Hallows, shows a man torn by ambition, tempted by power, and haunted by youthful mistakes. His bond with Gellert Grindelwald nearly led him down a dark path, but Dumbledore, too, chose differently. He chose restraint, penance, and a life dedicated to guiding others rather than ruling them. When he tells Harry that choices matter more than abilities, he speaks not only as a mentor, but as someone who lived that truth. This parallel deepens the impact of the foreshadowing, tying Dumbledore's arc to Harry's and reinforcing the centrality of the theme. The genius of this hidden clue is that it reframes the entire Slytherin question. Readers, especially younger ones, are inclined to see Slytherin as synonymous with evil, but Dumbledore undermines this notion at the very start. He insists that greatness lies not in blood but in decision. This does not excuse Voldemort, but it does illuminate how close Harry came to a similar fate. Without his insistence, not Slytherin, without his repeated choices to value love over ambition, Harry's story could have mirrored Riddle's. The difference is razor-thin, a matter of decision, not destiny, and that truth is embedded like a hidden rune in the very first installment. When read with hindsight, the moment in Dumbledore's office in Philosopher's Stone becomes one of the most vital in the saga. It is Rowling's way of whispering to her readers that the real battle is not fought with wands or spells, but within the human heart. The sorting hat scene and Dumbledore's advice together serve as the earliest foreshadowing of the central truth. Harry's greatest power is not his scar, his fame, or his inherited gifts, but his choices. It is this power, invisible and quiet, that ultimately defeats Voldemort, who never understood it, and so the casual reassurance, spoken to a child at the end of his first adventure, becomes the prophecy that defines the end of them all. Number 19, the chess game as a symbol of war. The chess match deep beneath Hogwarts in the first book of the Harry Potter series seems at first like nothing more than an inventive test to block young students from reaching the Philosopher's Stone. When read for the first time, it dazzles with spectacle, the clashing of giant stone pieces, the loud crack of smashed pawns, the risk of real injury. Yet with each rereading, the scene grows darker, more profound. The game of wizard chess is not simply a puzzle, it is a miniature war complete with sacrifice, strategy, and the acceptance of inevitable loss. It foreshadows the much greater war to come, when Harry and his friends will have to face not only Voldemort but also the crushing reality that victory demands casualties. The board becomes a mirror of the saga's future battlefields, where flesh and blood replace stone, and where bravery often leads directly into sacrifice. Rowling does not place the children as detached spectators, they are part of the board itself. Ron takes the role of a knight, Hermione stands ready as a bishop, Harry as another piece in play. They are no longer observers but soldiers inside a system larger than themselves. When Ron declares that someone must be sacrificed, his voice rings with a seriousness beyond his years. The phrase, "that's chess," in the book sounds almost casual, but its weight is immense. In that simple declaration lies a truth that will resurface in every volume. Not all can be saved, not all will return, and the pieces that fall allow the game to continue. The sacrifice Ron makes in that moment echoes through the series. He knows the knight must fall so the king, and by extension the game, can be won. Lying unconscious on the board, Ron becomes the first of Harry's friends to fall in the name of victory. Later, as readers, we cannot help but link his unconscious body, sprawled across the checkered floor, to the fate of Fred, who collapses in the Battle of Hogwarts. The twins' death is sudden, shocking, yet also a brutal reminder of what Ron hinted at so early. The victory against Voldemort was always going to demand lives. Chess established the rule, and war carried it out. The pawns of that match, those faceless figures who march forward knowing they will be shattered, embody the countless unnamed witches and wizards who later die in the war. We hear of them briefly in the books, names on casualty lists, students who never return, fighters whose sacrifice is recognized only in passing. They are pawns in the cruelest sense, individuals erased by the weight of history. The giant stone pawns being smashed apart in Philosopher's Stone do not scream, yet the silence makes them more haunting. It is the silence of the fallen, those whose sacrifice rarely makes it into stories, but without whom no victory would be possible. Sirius Black's fate mirrors another piece. He is not a pawn but a protector, a rook standing firm as a fortress. His presence in Harry's life is sudden, strong, and for a time unshakable, but even a rook can be captured. The fall through the veil in the Department of Mysteries is his final move, sudden and brutal. In the echo of his loss, readers remember that chessboard where pieces are removed swiftly and permanently with no appeal, no second chance. His death leaves Harry exposed, just as losing a major piece destabilizes the board. The lesson introduced in the first book becomes clear. The game is relentless, and attachments do not protect anyone from being taken. Dobby, the house elf who gives his life to save Harry and his friends, is another reflection of the chessboard's brutal mathematics. In many ways, Dobby embodies the pawn who reaches the far end of the board, transforming through loyalty and bravery into a piece more powerful than anyone expected. His journey is extraordinary, from a servant enslaved by the Malfoys to a hero who rescues Harry from the Malfoy manor. Yet his death, stabbed by Bellatrix's knife, reminds us that even the most transformed pawn can be removed from the game. Harry buries him under the inscription, "Here lies Dobby, a free elf," and the grief feels familiar, as though we have seen this before, back when stone pawns cracked apart under the pressure of the match. Severus Snape is perhaps the most complex echo of the chessboard. He is the bishop who moves diagonally, never straightforward, always indirect, and often misunderstood. His role is one of deception and hidden loyalty, and only when the game nears its end does his sacrifice become visible Snape's death at the hands of Voldemort is no less than a bishop's strategic loss, painful, essential, and irreversible. He gives Harry the final pieces of truth, and then he falls. Readers recall how Hermione once stood as a bishop in the chess match, nervous but committed, ready to take a role that required indirect action. The board had told us long before, bishops are destined to sacrifice through complex paths. And then there is Harry himself. In the first book, he plays as part of the team, but ultimately steps into the role of king, the piece the entire game revolves around. He is protected, guided, carried forward by others, yet always the target. The end of the saga brings the most direct fulfillment of the chessboard prophecy. Harry willingly offers himself up to death, walking into the Forbidden Forest to face Voldemort. Just as Ron once said, "That's chess." Harry understands that for others to live, the king must sometimes surrender. He dies, if only briefly, and in that moment he embodies the deepest theme of the board. Sacrifice not as accident, but as choice. The theme of self-sacrifice, planted in the chess game, grows relentlessly through the saga. Cedric Diggory's death in the Triwizard Tournament is another pawn taken suddenly, brutally, with little fanfare. Albus Dumbledore's fall from the Astronomy Tower is the removal of a queen from the board, devastating and leaving the allies weaker, their strategies suddenly unclear. Each time, readers are reminded of the moment when Ron fell from his horse on that black and white board, unconscious but victorious. The seeds of the war's reality were there from the beginning, hidden beneath the guise of a children's puzzle. The actual language of the book emphasizes this foreshadowing. Rowling writes, "There was no other way." "It's you who has to go on, Harry," Ron muttered. "I know it. Not me, not Hermione, you." These words read like the prophecy itself. They are not just instructions for the moment, but a summary of the entire series. Again and again others fall so Harry may advance until finally he, too, accepts the inevitability of becoming the sacrificial piece. The scene is quiet compared to the roaring battles that follow in later books, yet it contains within it the entire shape of the story. It is striking that the board is black and white, the simplest symbol of opposition. Yet the war that follows is anything but simple. Voldemort's forces blur the lines of morality, even those on the side of good struggle with flaws, compromises and regrets. Chess presents war as a series of logical moves, yet the real war in the wizarding world is drenched in emotion, love, betrayal and fear. Still, the chess match stands as a symbolic simplification, a map to guide the reader in understanding that beneath the complexity, the ultimate truth remains. Someone must fall for someone else to move forward. When the Battle of Hogwarts arrives, the Great Hall itself becomes a chessboard. Families are divided, bodies lie across the stone floor, and strategic moves by both sides decide the night. Harry, moving like a king, slips into the shadows, sacrificing himself so the game may continue. Voldemort, blinded by arrogance, misreads the strategy, just as an inexperienced player might underestimate a pawn. And in the end, it is Neville Longbottom, once dismissed as clumsy, who acts like the pawn that reaches the final rank, destroying the last horcrux and changing the tide. The chessboard echoes in every choice, every loss, every scream that fills the castle's corridors. The most chilling aspect of this foreshadowing is how easily it can be overlooked in a first reading. Many children encountering Philosopher's Stone see only a thrilling magical puzzle with clever tactics and an unconscious friend. But on revisiting the series, the scene transforms. It becomes impossible not to see Sirius falling through the veil, Dobby dying on the beach, Snape bleeding in the boathouse, Fred's laughter silenced, and Harry's quiet march into the forest. Each of them had been on that chessboard all along, foreshadowed by the crash of stone against stone. The sacrifices also highlight what makes Harry's side ultimately different from Voldemort's. For Voldemort, every piece is disposable, tools to be used and discarded. For Harry, every sacrifice is mourned, Every loss leaves a scar. The board teaches him early the reality of war, but his compassion ensures that, unlike Voldemort, he never treats his allies as mere pieces. The emotional weight of each loss becomes part of his strength, turning what began as a child's lesson in strategy into a man's understanding of love and loyalty. Thus the wizard chess match in Philosopher's Stone is far more than an exciting climax to a children's adventure. It is the shadow of all the battles to come, the symbolic battlefield that whispers of death and sacrifice long before the reader is ready to confront them. Every fallen piece on that board stands in for a name we later grieve. Every strategic move anticipates the war that defines the series. When Ron said, "That's chess," he was not just explaining a move, he was unveiling the rule that governs the entire saga. Victory demands sacrifice, and the pieces that fall shape the triumph that follows. Number 20, Luna Lovegood and Her Strangeness. Of all the characters who drift into the story after Harry's first years at Hogwarts, none carry an aura of mystery quite like Luna Lovegood. She arrives in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, seated serenely in a compartment of the Hogwarts Express, wearing radish-shaped earrings, reading the Quibbler upside down, and speaking with a soft, far-away voice. To the casual reader, she is a portrait of eccentricity, someone designed to add comic relief to the growing darkness of the fifth book. Yet, beneath her odd exterior, Luna provides the narrative with something more profound. She becomes a subtle oracle, a character whose words and perceptions serve as hidden signposts to the deeper truths of Rowling's world. The first clue comes from the very way Harry meets her. After witnessing Cedric Diggory's death in the graveyard and the return of Voldemort, Harry begins his 5th year weighed down by trauma. When he sees Thestrals, skeletal winged horses invisible to most, he feels isolated. Ron and Hermione cannot see them, leaving him to doubt his own mind. Yet Luna, sitting calmly at his side, remarks with certainty, "You're not mad. I can see them too." In that single moment, Luna validates Harry's experience. She embodies a theme threaded throughout the series. The truths that most ignore or deny are often the ones most important. The Thestrals, tied to death, grief, and memory, become not a sign of madness but a lesson in hidden vision, and Luna is the guide who introduces Harry to that truth. Luna's ability to perceive what others overlook extends beyond magical creatures. When the students form Dumbledore's army in the Room of Requirement, she offers unwavering support for Harry's leadership. While others, like Zachariah Smith, question Harry's credibility, Luna trusts him without hesitation. This faith is not born of logic or argument. It stems from a deeper intuition that Harry's path, however uncertain, leads towards something essential. Her trust foreshadows the loyalty that will bind Harry's closest allies in the battles to come. In Luna's eyes, the unseen currents of destiny carry more weight than the noisy doubts of her peers. Her eccentric conversations, often dismissed as nonsense, are another place where Rowling hides her narrative cues. Luna talks of Nargles, crumple-horned Snorkax, and Raxperts, creatures that provoke laughter from her classmates. Yet Rowling uses this pattern to blur the boundary between the absurd and the prophetic. Some of Luna's madness rings true when examined later. Raxperts, which she claims make people's brains go fuzzy, appear metaphorical, but when Harry wears her spectre specs in Deathly Hallows, he perceives things he would otherwise miss. Even her belief in Nargles, though never confirmed, becomes symbolic of the unseen forces that shape events, much like the magical protections Harry encounters throughout his journey. Luna's faith in the invisible mirrors the reader's gradual realization that the world of Harry Potter is full of truths hidden in plain sight. Perhaps Luna's most haunting narrative role emerges after Sirius Black's death. While Harry reels from the loss, she approaches him with a quiet wisdom that none of his other friends can offer. She speaks of her mother's passing and her conviction that death is not an end, but a transformation. "You heard them just behind the veil, didn't you?" "They were just lurking out of sight," she tells him, referring to the voices beyond the archway in the department of mysteries. In Luna's words lies a clue that death itself is not as final as most wizards fear. She becomes a voice of comfort and an interpreter of mysteries, easing Harry's torment with her serene acceptance. Her presence assures both Harry and the reader that death, though painful, is part of a larger, unseen reality. The prophetic edge of her character deepens when she joins Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, and Ginny on their reckless mission to the Ministry of Magic. Her inclusion in this group is not accidental. Though not part of Harry's inner circle until that point, Luna proves indispensable. She fights with calm ferocity, showing that belief in the invisible is matched by courage in the visible. Rowling seems to suggest that the ones mocked for their oddities may in fact hold the greatest reserves of bravery. Luna's participation also highlights her narrative purpose. She is present when the veil between life and death is most dramatically encountered, further cementing her role as a figure attuned to mysteries others overlook. In Half-Blood Prince, Luna continues to serve as an unlikely beacon of truth. When Harry invites her to Professor Slughorn's Christmas party, she is delighted, though others find her an embarrassing choice of companion. Yet Luna's presence at Harry's side speaks volumes about his character development. By choosing her, he recognizes the value of her insight, even if it remains invisible to most. It is Luna who later provides commentary at Dumbledore's funeral that resonates more deeply than anyone's speeches. She does not offer platitudes. Instead, she radiates a quiet understanding that grief is not something to be masked, but something to be lived with and transformed. Her ability to name truths without fear makes her invaluable. One of the clearest examples of Luna's narrative foresight comes in Deathly Hallows during the search for Ravenclaw's lost diadem. Her knowledge of her own house's history surpasses that of even Hermione, the supposed encyclopedic mind of the trio. She directs Harry to the Grey Lady, who holds the secret of the Horcrux's location. Without Luna's peculiar attentiveness to overlooked legends, Harry might never have uncovered the diadem. Once again, the girl dismissed as strange delivers the key to progress. The reader who first encountered her whimsical stories in the 5th book may only then realize that Luna's words were never random. They were part of a hidden map guiding the way. Rowling also positions Luna as a symbolic counterbalance to fear and conformity. At Hogwarts, where students often bow to social pressures and ridicule, Luna remains unshaken in her individuality. She decorates her room with painted portraits of her friends connected by chains of flowers, symbolizing her unwavering belief in connection and loyalty. Her eccentricity becomes her shield, allowing her to see and say things others would not dare. By refusing to conform, she embodies the novel's recurring theme that true strength lies in authenticity rather than popularity. This defiance of convention foreshadows the resistance that will define the final battle. Even in captivity, Luna retains her gift of insight. When imprisoned in Malfoy Manor alongside Ollivander, she becomes a source of comfort not only to him, but also later to Harry. Ollivander recalls how Luna's calm presence steadied him during their darkest days. This serenity, born of her conviction in truths beyond sight, is contagious. It underscores a crucial narrative clue. Hope is not dependent on circumstances, but on vision. Luna's strange worldview allows her to see possibility where others see only despair, and in doing so, she embodies the very resilience Harry himself must learn to wield. Luna's role in the Battle of Hogwarts further cements her hidden purpose. While chaos erupts, she helps Harry focus on the need to speak with Helena Ravenclaw. Her insistence cuts through his panic, demonstrating that her intuition continues to guide him towards solutions others might dismiss. At that moment, Luna is not merely the eccentric girl who once read the Quibbler upside down. She is the one who ensures Harry takes the final steps toward victory. Her peculiarities, once mocked, become essential to the unravelling of Voldemort's defences. Her strangeness, then, is not accidental characterization. It is a narrative device that Rowling uses to signal hidden truths to attentive readers. When Luna speaks, the reader is invited to pause. Is this nonsense or is it a clue? Time and again, her remarks prove to carry weight, whether about death, magical history, or unseen forces. The casual reader may laugh and move on, but the attentive one will sense that Luna's eccentric wisdom is worth storing away, much like the cryptic words of an oracle in an ancient myth. This deliberate layering of meaning transforms Luna into one of the most quietly powerful characters in the saga. She represents the line between the seen and unseen, sanity and madness, belief and doubt. Her eccentricities cloak her role as a narrative whisperer, someone who delivers Rowling's clues wrapped in whimsy. When she tells Harry about the Thestrals, when she comforts him after Sirius's death, when she directs him to the Grey Lady, each of these moments is more than character interaction. They are structural supports for the story's progression. For readers revisiting the series, Luna's significance becomes impossible to ignore. Her introduction may seem light-hearted, but her trajectory reveals her as a compass pointing toward hidden truths. She teaches Harry and us that the world contains layers unseen by most, and that to dismiss the strange is to risk overlooking the essential. In her, Rowling places the reminder that wisdom often comes from the margins, and that sometimes the most peculiar voice in the room is the one speaking the truth. And so, Luna Lovegood, the girl mocked as Loony, emerges as one of Rowling's most potent narrative instruments. She is not merely a supporting character, but a hidden guide, her words functioning as riddles whose answers shape the very path of the story. To read her only as comic relief is to miss the depth of Rowling's design. Luna's madness is a veil, and through it the attentive reader can glimpse the heartbeat of the series, the unseen truths that change everything once they are believed. Number 21. The meaning of Hedwig's name. Of all the creatures that appear in the Harry Potter saga, none carries such a subtle yet deeply symbolic meaning as the snowy owl who first swoops into Harry's life on his 11th birthday. To many readers, Hedwig appears as a simple companion, a pet bought in Diagon Alley after Hagrid takes Harry to Ollivanders, yet her name is not arbitrary. When J.K. Rowling placed that name on the page, she tied the owl to a much older history, one that echoes themes of loss, guardianship, and childhood innocence. Hedwig is not merely a pet, she becomes a living symbol of what Harry has lost and what he still clings to throughout his difficult journey. Her very name hides a clue that only surfaces fully when her role comes to its close. Hedwig was the name of a Catholic saint who became a protector of orphans and the poor, a connection that resonates strongly with the story of the boy who lived. The first moment Hedwig appears in the story feels almost casual. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Hagrid plops a snowy owl onto Harry's lap, saying cheerfully, "Happy birthday, Harry." To Harry, raised in the neglectful household of the Dursleys, it is not just a gift, it is the first present of his life, the first gesture of kindness, freely offered. Readers often pass by this moment without realizing the layers of meaning hidden in it. For an orphan who has lived in a cupboard under the stairs, Hedwig represents love in its purest form, faithful companionship without condition. The saintly origin of her name underscores that symbolism, marking her as a quiet guardian whose presence reminds Harry that he is not abandoned. Saint Hedwig of Silesia, the historical figure behind the name, was known for her work with orphans and the destitute. After her husband's death, she devoted her life to helping the needy, especially children without families. When we compare this history with Harry's own life, the parallel is striking. Hedwig the owl becomes his only friend during the long, oppressive summers with the Dursleys. While Dudley mocks him and Aunt Petunia locks away his school things, Hedwig sits patiently in her cage, glaring at the Dursleys as though she alone refuses to accept their cruelty. Rowling's choice of name suggests that Hedwig's role was always more than ornamental. She is a guardian, a caretaker, a silent presence that reminds both Harry and the reader that even in isolation, one is never truly alone. Consider the summers described in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. After Harry is forbidden from using magic, locked in his room, and treated like a prisoner, Hedwig becomes his only source of comfort. Rowling writes, Harry lay on his bed and gazed at the tiny patch of starry sky visible through the bars on his window, and at the lonely owl who sat inside, her amber eyes fixed on him reproachfully. In this passage, Hedwig is more than an animal. She is a mirror of Harry's own captivity. Yet unlike the humans in his life, she remains loyal, refusing to abandon him. Her silent companionship functions exactly as the saint's patronage would, as a shield for the orphan, ensuring that Harry endures his darkest days. Hedwig also acts as a messenger, not just in the literal sense of carrying letters, but symbolically as a bridge between two worlds. For Harry, letters from Ron, Hermione, and Sirius are more than words on parchment. They are proof that he belongs somewhere, that he has a family beyond Privet Drive. Hedwig's tireless flights deliver hope. When she wings her way across the sky carrying Sirius's letters in The Prisoner of Azkaban, she keeps alive Harry's fragile connection to his godfather, the one adult who truly longs to care for him. Every time she lands on Harry's shoulder or taps at the window with a letter, she embodies the possibility of love breaking through isolation. It is a role that goes unnoticed unless one pauses to reflect on her name and what it implies about her symbolic duty. Rowling herself highlights Hedwig's emotional importance by giving her a personality distinct from other owls. She is dignified, often disapproving of Harry's forgetfulness or the Dursleys' behaviour. In The Goblet of Fire, when Harry neglects her after arriving at the Burrow, she sulks and pointedly ignores him. Rowling writes, Hedwig gave him an extremely cold look and took off for the open window. This is not the behaviour of a simple pet, but of a companion who demands respect, who knows her own worth. Her proud character parallels the strength of Saint Hedwig, who refused to live a life of ease after her husband's death and instead chose service. Both figures, historical and fictional, are female guardians whose role is to stand firm even in the face of neglect. The deeper significance of Hedwig's name comes into full clarity only in the Deathly Hallows. At the very beginning of the book, as Harry is being smuggled away from Privet Drive in the Seven Potters operation, Hedwig dies. A flash of green light strikes her cage, and Rowling describes the moment in haunting simplicity. The owl screeched and fell to the bottom of her cage. It is a brief passage, but its impact is devastating. Readers who once considered Hedwig a background character suddenly feel the enormity of her loss. It is no coincidence that this happens at the very start of Harry's final journey. The death of his owl is symbolic. The skate protector of his childhood has fallen, and with her, the innocence of his youth disappears forever. Harry's reaction to Hedwig's death is one of stunned grief. In the chaos of the aerial battle, he cannot even mourn properly. Rowling later notes his pain when he remembers her. The loss of Hedwig was a blow. It was like the loss of a connection to his childhood. Here, Rowling makes the symbolism explicit. Hedwig was not just a pet, but a tether to the years when Harry was discovering the magic world with wonder. Her loss marks the end of that period, pushing him into the harsh responsibilities of adulthood, where death and sacrifice are no longer abstractions, but realities he must face head-on. When placed beside the history of Saint Hedwig, this death scene gains even more resonance. The saint dedicated her life to protecting children without parents. In Harry's case, Hedwig the owl could not shield him from the war to come. Her death becomes the final lesson. Even guardians cannot remain forever. The orphan must grow, must face danger alone. Just as saints in Catholic tradition often suffer martyrdom to inspire the living, Hedwig's fall is a sacrifice that hardens Harry for what lies ahead. The quiet clue hidden in her name blossoms into its full meaning only at this moment. It is worth remembering that Hedwig's presence stretches across every book, quietly framing Harry's journey. In the Philosopher's Stone, she is his first gift. In the Chamber of Secrets, she shares his imprisonment. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, she keeps alive his bond with Sirius. In the Goblet of Fire, she demands his attention, reminding him to value loyalty. In the Order of the Phoenix, she suffers wounds from carrying messages mirroring the dangers Harry himself faces. And in The Half-Blood Prince, she accompanies him as he begins to take on adult burdens. Through all of these stages, she represents stability. Her name, tied to guardianship, reminds us that Harry never truly grew alone, even if he thought he did. The depth of this symbolism becomes clearer when we see how Rowling treats other animals in the story. Crookshanks, Hermione's cat, is clever but mischievous. Scabbers, Ron's rat, turns out to be treacherous. Only Hedwig is portrayed with consistent dignity and loyalty. She is always on Harry's side, never betraying him, never faltering in her task. This sets her apart, and it aligns her with the noble qualities of her namesake. Readers may not consciously notice this distinction at first, but it builds subconsciously, preparing the ground for the shock of her final departure. Even the snowy whiteness of Hedwig's feathers contributes to her symbolic weight. White is traditionally associated with innocence, purity, and protection. The image of Hedwig against the darkness of Harry's summers in Little Whinging is almost angelic, as though she carries with her a touch of divine guardianship. When she is struck down in the Deathly Hallows, it feels like the extinguishing of light itself, a deliberate moment in which Rowling tells us the time for innocence has ended. The boy has become a man, and the last vestige of his childhood has vanished with a single flash of green. Perhaps the greatest narrative strength of this hidden clue is that it operates silently. Readers do not need to know about St. Hedwig of Silesia to feel the loss of the owl, but once the connection is made, it deepens the experience immeasurably. The story of Harry Potter thrives on such layers, details that reward those who read again, who look beneath the surface. Hedwig's name is not a random flourish. It is a deliberate reminder that symbols of love and guardianship shape Harry's world as much as wands and spells. In her companionship, Harry finds hope. In her death, he finds the strength to face the war alone. In the end, the snowy owl who carried letters across the sky leaves behind more than memories. She leaves a legacy of what it means to be a child clinging to scraps of kindness in a cruel world. She embodies loyalty, protection, and sacrifice, all hidden in a name borrowed from a saint who once cared for orphans. For Harry, she was the quiet constant, the first friend who taught him that love could be steadfast. And for readers who look closely, she is the reminder that every name in this story may carry a secret waiting to be uncovered. Number 22. The symbolism in Draco Malfoy's surname. The name Malfoy carries with it a weight that most readers do not immediately recognize. When first encountering Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the boy seems like a simple archetype, the spoiled bully, the antagonist to Harry's fresh innocence. Yet the deeper one looks, the more the name reveals itself to be not only a signal of his character, but also a subtle prophecy. Derived from Old French, Malfoy literally means bad faith or ill will. In literature, names are rarely accidental, and J.K. Rowling, steeped in classical references, used this name to weave a thread of destiny into Draco's role. On the surface, it paints him as untrustworthy, arrogant, and destined for darkness. But the irony lies in the fact that Draco's story does not end with him as a pure villain. Instead, he embodies the tension of someone born into bad faith, struggling to free himself from it. When Harry first meets Draco on the train to Hogwarts, the boy introduces himself with an air of superiority. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter," he sneers. To most readers, it seems like the bratty arrogance of a child raised in privilege, but the name attached to that arrogance already hints that Draco's confidence is poisoned, corrupted from birth by the ideology of his family. He is raised to believe in pure blood supremacy, raised to see others through suspicion and disdain, raised in bad faith. Yet even in this first meeting there is a flicker of the other path. Draco reaches out his hand to Harry, an act of potential friendship, one that could have rewritten his entire destiny. Harry refuses, and Draco is pushed firmly onto the track his name suggests. The irony of Malfoy is that Harry's rejection seals his place among the enemies, though deep inside, Draco will never fully embody the cruelty his name promises. In Chamber of Secrets, Draco's role becomes sharper. He insults Hermione Granger by calling her mudblood, a word dripping with the prejudice inherited from his family. It is one of the cruelest slurs in the wizarding world, and Draco throws it with casual venom. But even here, bad faith whispers beneath the surface. He uses the word not because he has truly reasoned its meaning, but because it is the language of his home, the expectation of his father. In truth, Draco does not think independently at this age. He parrots Lucius Malfoy's beliefs, showing that his faith is not his own. It is borrowed, poisoned by the generations before him. The name Malfoy becomes a chain around his neck, binding him to prejudices he has not yet dared to question. By Prisoner of Azkaban, we see Draco continue his role as an antagonist. He mocks Harry for fainting near Dementors and revels in his injuries during Quidditch. He is almost cartoonishly cruel, but again, the name is at play. Bad faith is not just about believing in evil, it is about living dishonestly, living against one's deeper truth. Draco's cruelty feels performative, a mask he wears because he believes it is what is expected of him. When Harry, Hermione and Ron encounter him during Buckbeak's execution storyline, his glee is exaggerated, almost theatrical. Draco is still acting the role carved for him. His bad faith is the lie he tells himself that he is powerful, secure and destined for greatness. In truth, he is a boy hiding behind the shield of his surname. In Goblet of Fire, the cracks begin to show. Draco taunts Harry about Cedric Diggory, mocking him for his fame and suggesting that Harry will meet disaster in the tournament. But when the Death Eaters riot at the Quidditch World Cup, Draco is noticeably absent from the violence. He sneers from the sidelines, but he does not participate. Here the meaning of Malfoy evolves. He is in bad faith, not only because of his inherited beliefs, but because he lacks the courage to fully commit to either side. He is caught between the ideology he was taught and the fear that prevents him from embracing it wholeheartedly. It is the cowardice of someone born into evil, yet unwilling to fully embrace it. The prophecy hidden in his name becomes most vivid in Half-Blood Prince. Draco is tasked by Voldemort with killing Albus Dumbledore, a mission that defines his character. His surname now weighs on him like never before. He must prove the loyalty of his family, cleanse the shame of his father's failure at the ministry. Bad faith takes on its fullest meaning here. Draco pretends to be the cold assassin, but inside he trembles. "I don't have a choice," he whispers to Dumbledore on the Astronomy Tower, his wand shaking. This moment unmasks him. The boy who mocked, sneered, and spat venom for 5 books reveals that he has been living in a costume of cruelty, forced into it by the curse of his name. He cannot kill Dumbledore because he has never truly believed in the evil he professes. His faith was always bad, hollow, a shield of arrogance that collapses under the weight of reality. Snape's intervention in that scene is telling. Severus, bound by the unbreakable vow, kills Dumbledore instead, sparing Draco from committing the act. In this sense, the prophecy of Malfoy is subverted. Though his name signals doom, though his lineage demands blood, Draco escapes. His inability to kill shows that bad faith is not his ultimate truth. It is the false identity forced upon him, one he cannot sustain in the face of genuine moral. choice. This moment reframes every sneer and insult of his earlier years as a hollow performance, a boy acting out a role he did not fully understand. The struggle continues in Deathly Hallows. At Malfoy Manor, Draco is confronted with Harry, Ron, and Hermione captured by the Snatchers. His parents demand he identify them. Draco hesitates. The boy who once delighted in insulting Hermione now cannot look her in the eye. He stammers, avoids confirmation, and allows ambiguity to cloud his words. "I can't be sure," he mutters. This hesitation is everything. The name Malfoy, born of bad faith, is tested again, and once more Draco refuses to cross the line into true evil. He cannot betray them directly, even as his parents press him. His cowardice saves lives, showing that his false faith in Voldemort's ideology has completely eroded. Another powerful example comes during the Battle of Hogwarts. When Harry, believed dead, is carried back by Hagrid, Voldemort demands the Malfoys step forward. Narcissa lies to the Dark Lord, declaring that Harry is dead. Draco, though present, is silent, following his mother away from the battlefield. Here the prophecy of his name culminates. The Malfoys as a family embody bad faith. They pledge loyalty to Voldemort, yet betray him when it serves their survival. Draco, swept along, is revealed not as a villain, but as a survivor. His fate is not glorious, not heroic, but it is human. His inability to fully commit to darkness is his quiet redemption. In this way, Draco's surname works as a constant reminder of the inner conflict that defines him. He is not Voldemort, who believes wholeheartedly in his own vision of power. He is not Bellatrix Lestrange, who delights in cruelty with fanatical devotion. Draco is trapped in between, living dishonestly, serving an ideology he cannot truly embrace, wearing a mask he cannot fully remove. His name foreshadows this duplicity, this tragic entrapment between evil and decency. The echoes of bad faith extend even beyond the series. In the epilogue, Draco appears on platform 9 3/4, older and subdued, his own son at his side. He no longer sneers or mocks Harry, but nods in quiet acknowledgement. The name remains, but its curse has softened. The man Draco becomes is no longer driven by arrogance or false loyalty. He has outlived the shadow of his father's ideology, though the trace of bad faith lingers in his guarded demeanor. He is not free of the past, but he is no longer its prisoner. For readers who only skim the surface, Malfoy is simply a villain's surname, sharp and sinister in sound, but for those who linger, the name reveals itself as a plot woven into the fabric of the story. It is a prophecy of dishonesty, of a boy cursed to act the part of a villain without ever fully believing it. His every hesitation, every falter, every moment of weakness becomes proof that the name's meaning is alive within him. Rowling's artistry lies in these subtle cues. Just as Remus Lupin's name foreshadows his lycanthropy, or Sirius Black's his connection to the Dog Star, Draco Malfoy's surname foreshadows his battle with falsehood. It is not about his cruelty alone, but about the dishonesty of his existence, the bad faith that keeps him bound to an ideology he does not fully inhabit. Readers who revisit the story discover that his name is a roadmap, predicting the inner struggle that defines him. The tragedy of Draco is not that he is evil, but that he is weak. His surname does not condemn him to villainy. It condemns him to cowardice, to living in bad faith, to failing to act with courage until it is almost too late. And yet, this weakness saves him. Because he cannot fully believe in darkness, because his faith in Voldemort is poisoned from the start, he survives where true believers perish. In this, his name is both curse and salvation, a reminder that even in bad faith there can be the seed of redemption. Number 23, the prophetic star chart at Hogwarts. Under the dim enchanted sky above the Hogwarts astronomy tower, Harry Potter first glimpsed the stars as something more than distant lights. The moment appears in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone as a simple classroom scene. one of those details a young reader might brush past in favour of the excitement of Quidditch matches and hidden chambers. Yet Rowling, with her method of weaving small symbols into the larger tapestry of her world, plants a subtle hint here that carries far greater weight. Astronomy in Hogwarts, often treated by the students as the least practical subject, becomes a lens through which prophecy and destiny flicker into view. The stars, as Professor Sinistra instructs them, hold maps of patterns far older than Hogwarts itself. And it is on one of those nights that Harry notices a faintly marked constellation of a serpent glowing in lines of silver across a parchment map. At first this seems no more than a schoolboy's lesson, but the serpent proves to be a symbol that coils tightly around the story's core. The constellation Harry observes is never named with precision in Rowling's text, but the imagery recalls serpens, the ancient star pattern that astronomers know as a split constellation divided into Serpens Kappa and Serpens Cauda, the serpent's head and tail. For a boy already tied to the image of a lightning bolt scar and the house of Gryffindor's lion, this small encounter with the serpent passes unremarked. Yet when a reader revisits the tale knowing the eventual path Harry will tread, the map glimmers with meaning. The serpent is no idle decoration. It is the herald of Slytherin, the mark of Voldemort, and the mirror of Harry's own hidden connection to Parseltongue. What Rowling leaves unspoken is as important as what she writes. She allows the serpent to appear early, shrouded in the neutral light of astronomy, so that when it returns in darker forms, through the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, or Nagini slithering beside Voldemort, it feels as though the stars themselves had whispered this fate. When Harry sits under the canopy of night sky, clutching his telescope and parchment, he is unaware of how much the stars foreshadow. The narrative is careful to note that astronomy is not a subject filled with immediate spells or practical charms. It is instead the study of patterns and symbols, something 11-year-olds rarely find thrilling. Ron Weasley yawns, Hermione Granger dutifully takes notes, and Harry gazes upward with the curiosity of someone unused to looking at anything beyond the Dursleys' narrow world. They had to learn the names of different stars and the movements of the planets, Rowling writes, describing the course as if it were a distant echo of real medieval studies, where magic and astronomy were inseparable. Within this quiet lesson, however, Harry encounters the serpent constellation. At the time, it blends into the academic exercise, just another figure to memorize for Sinistra's exam. But Rowling's choice of symbol is not accidental. The serpent is not Orion, nor the heroic Leo, nor noble Pegasus. It is the emblem of secrecy and danger. The serpent, as a mythological and biblical figure, carries a long history of treachery and temptation. In Genesis, it is the serpent that tempts Eve. In Roman myths, serpents guard hidden treasures. In Hogwarts itself, the serpent is more than an emblem on Slytherin's banner. It is a living lineage that stretches from Salazar Slytherin to Tom Riddle, culminating in Lord Voldemort. When Rowling has Harry first notice the serpent constellation in his astronomy lesson, she weaves together myth, history, and character destiny in a single, understated detail. For readers who rush past, it is a map no more significant than a chart of weather, but once the later books unveil Harry's ability to speak Parseltongue and his fated duel with the last heir of Slytherin, that quiet moment under the stars looks like an omen written in the sky. There is a sense in which Rowling treats astronomy as the most ancient magic of all. Unlike charms or potions, which involve immediate action, astronomy suggests inevitability, cycles, and fate. For Harry, this early brush with the serpent constellation foreshadows his entanglement with Voldemort in a way that even Dumbledore does not explain. Dumbledore later remarks, "You are the only one who has ever survived the curse." But long before the curse is mentioned, long before the prophecy in the Department of Mysteries is revealed, the stars already whisper that Harry's life will be marked by serpents. This is not an obvious prophecy spelled out in crystal balls. Instead, Rowling hides her prophecy in plain sight, disguised as a student's lesson. The serpent on the chart is the story's truest prophecy because it reflects a reality no character can alter. Harry and the serpent are bound. When Harry faces the basilisk in Chamber of Secrets, the serpent imagery from the Astronomy Tower seems to come alive. The creature that moves through the pipes beneath Hogwarts is not merely a monster, it is the embodiment of Slytherin's power, the living serpent whose gaze kills. Yet strangely, Harry's ability to command the serpent tongue gives him an edge. His connection to Voldemort allows him to face serpents not with fear, but with a strange kinship. The stars, in their distant silence, predicted this. Harry's destiny is not to avoid the serpent, but to confront it, survive it, and in surviving, reveal who he truly is. Readers who recall the early mention of the serpent constellation can feel the echo between sky and earth. The map on parchment and the monster in the chamber are linked by the same symbol. Rowling reinforces this symbolism later in the series through Nagini, Voldemort's constant companion. Nagini is more than a pet, she is a horcrux, the very vessel of his fractured soul. Her name, derived from Sanskrit for serpent, again ties the villain to the cosmic imagery of snakes. Harry, marked by his scar and his strange ability to speak to her, is again positioned opposite her in a mirror-like dance. The stars do not lie. From that first night with the constellation to the final battle in the Forbidden Forest, serpents coil around Harry's journey. The early astronomy lesson becomes retrospectively prophetic, showing that fate itself had charted the boy's path through constellations long before he chose his first wand. Hermione's fascination with learning provides a contrast. Where Harry shrugs off astronomy as abstract, Hermione absorbs its structure and memorizes the details. Yet even she misses the deeper meaning because she is bound by logic rather than by symbolic intuition. Rowling uses this difference to highlight Harry's instinctive, almost subconscious awareness of patterns. He notices the serpent constellation not because he understands its meaning, but because it captures his attention, foreshadowing his unique link to serpents. Later, when Dumbledore tells Harry that the scar had not pained him for 19 years, the words mark the end of his entanglement with the serpent. But at the beginning, the serpent in the sky was the first warning, an unspoken prophecy. The power of Rowling's storytelling lies in these quiet details. Readers often recall the dramatic reveals, the prophecy in the orb, Trelawney's visions, or Dumbledore's explanations. Yet Rowling plants her most subtle clue in a setting where no one is looking for it. This is storytelling through omission, through background. The serpent constellation does not scream its importance. It waits, patient as destiny itself. Only when rereading does the connection crystallize and the reader sees that Harry's life was written in the stars as surely as in the prophecy hall. The serpent is destiny, coiled in the heavens, waiting for Harry to see it. It is telling that Harry does not share the moment with anyone. He does not turn to Ron and whisper about the serpent shape, nor does Hermione annotate it in her notes. It passes silently, almost forgotten. But silence is Rowling's weapon. She knows that what is not remarked upon by characters can still echo for the reader. The serpent constellation becomes the silent prophecy, the whisper of fate in a story crowded with louder predictions. In this way, astronomy, the class students treat as pointless, becomes the most accurate of all divinations. The serpent motif grows heavier as the series progresses. Voldemort's very name, derived from French to mean flight from death, is accompanied by his use of Nagini and his house's emblem. When Harry duels him in the graveyard in Goblet of Fire, the serpent imagery returns in the form of Voldemort's wand, twinned with Harry's, producing the phoenix feather connection. Yet serpents, not phoenixes, dominate Voldemort's world. His emblem is the dark mark, a skull with a serpent pouring from its mouth. Against this, Harry carries not only the scar, but the memory of that serpent constellation, the one he did not understand. The battle between them is cosmic as well as earthly. Even the Sorting Hat's warning to Harry in Philosopher's Stone ties into this imagery. The Hat insists you could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness. Harry resists, choosing Gryffindor, yet the serpent constellation above Hogwarts implies that he will never be free of that link. His very nature is divided, a Gryffindor with Slytherin's traits, a boy marked by serpents but destined to resist them. The stars knew before Harry did. Rowling lets us glimpse that truth through the Astronomy Tower lesson, a single spark that illuminates the rest of the saga. The artistry of Rowling's design is clear when one traces the serpent motif from constellation to prophecy, from basilisk to Nagini. Each serpent is a new form of the same fate, echoing that first astronomical chart. Readers who notice it can see that Rowling's world is built not on coincidence but on deliberate, layered design. She hides her prophecy not in Trelawney's trembling voice but in the patient stars above the school. By the time Harry walks into the forest in Deathly Hallows to face Voldemort willingly, the serpent symbol has completed its cycle. The boy who once studied the serpent on parchment now defeats the serpent embodied, proving that fate can be fulfilled without consuming the one bound to it. Number 24, The Secret of the Mirror of Erised. The Mirror of Erised is one of the earliest magical objects introduced in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and yet its role is deceptively small compared to the larger arc of the story. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than a mysterious relic tucked away in the depths of Hogwarts, but when Harry stumbles upon it, what the mirror reveals is not just his parents smiling back at him. The true significance of this moment, and Dumbledore's later warning, foreshadows an entire philosophy running through the series. That obsession with desire, whether it be love, power, or eternal life, has the power to consume and destroy. Readers who revisit the story with knowledge of later events can see the mirror not as an isolated curiosity, but as an early narrative clue, a whisper of danger wrapped in the allure of fantasy. When Harry first encounters the mirror, he is overwhelmed by the vision of his mother and father. The text tells us he had a powerful kind of ache inside him, half joy, half terrible sadness. For an 11-year-old boy who had grown up neglected and unloved, the scene is heartbreakingly irresistible. He returns night after night, eager to lose himself in the vision of the family he never had. The mirror tempts him not with power or riches, but with the most personal and intimate desire of his heart. Here lies the brilliance of its design. The mirror adapts itself to each viewer so that Harry's longing for his parents contrasts with Ron's vision of himself standing alone, admired and successful as head boy and Quidditch captain. Both boys are shown what they crave most, but both are confronted with illusions that could paralyze them in longing rather than move them forward in life. Dumbledore's warning to Harry about the mirror has often been quoted as a lesson in restraint. He tells him it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. But the simplicity of this advice masks a much darker undertone. Dumbledore admits that many have wasted away before the mirror, entranced by visions they could never touch. In retrospect, this line foreshadows not only Harry's journey, but Voldemort's downfall. Voldemort, after all, spends his life trapped by his dream of immortality, his reflection of power, never satisfied with reality. He becomes the very embodiment of Dumbledore's warning, dwelling on his dream until it consumes him. What seemed at first like advice to a lonely boy is in fact a prophecy written into the fabric of the series. The narrative role of the mirror grows clearer when we remember the final test, guarding the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell, manipulated by Voldemort, seeks the stone with the pure intention of using it to achieve immortality, but when he looks into the mirror he cannot retrieve it, for the enchantment placed upon the glass only allows one who seeks the stone, but not for selfish use, to acquire it. Harry, whose desire was simply to protect the stone rather than wield it, finds it in his pocket after gazing into the mirror. This twist reveals that the mirror is not merely a reflection of longing, it is also a test of integrity. It does not reward obsession but punishes it, echoing the danger Dumbledore described earlier. In this way, the mirror becomes the first lesson for Harry about the difference between desire and purpose. It is worth noting that the mirror of Erised never reappears after the first book, at least not physically, yet its symbolic shadow lingers throughout the series, hidden in the very structure of the story. Consider the horcruxes. Each horcrux represents Voldemort's obsession with cheating death, his inability to accept mortality. Much like the mirror, which shows but does not grant the desire, the horcruxes give him the illusion of immortality without true peace. He remains fragmented, his soul distorted, but never satisfied. In this sense, the mirror was an early hint of what happens when desire twists into obsession and obsession into ruin. The tragedy of obsession is not confined to Voldemort. Dumbledore himself admits later in the series that he too once fell victim to desires that blinded him. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, he confesses to Harry that his youthful ambition with Gellert Grindelwald nearly destroyed him. He explains that power was his great temptation and that he once dreamed of ruling for the greater good. His words echo the warning he gave Harry years earlier about the mirror. Dumbledore had looked into his own metaphorical mirror of Erised and seen visions that could have led him astray. It is precisely because he knows the danger of dreams that he warns Harry against them. The mirror in this way is not just a lesson for Harry, but a confession of Dumbledore's own past failures. Even Harry is not immune to the danger of obsession, though his desires are often purer than those of others. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, his determination to save Sirius leads him to rush into the Department of Mysteries, where tragedy unfolds. Here we see how fixation on a single goal, even one born of love, can blind him to caution. The seed of this flaw was planted years earlier when he stood before the mirror of Erised, entranced by the vision of his parents. Though he eventually learned to heed Dumbledore's warning, the temptation to dwell on dreams returned in different forms throughout his journey. The text of Philosopher's Stone makes it clear that the mirror is dangerous because it disguises itself as harmless truth. It does not deceive the viewer with lies, but with reflections of what is most wanted. This is what makes it so insidious. The images are honest, but they are incomplete. Harry really does long for his parents. Ron truly craves recognition, yet the mirror offers them no path to fulfillment, only an eternal loop of yearning. This dynamic mirrors Voldemort's fate perfectly. His desire for immortality is real, but every method he pursues leaves him hollow. The mirror foreshadows the curse of unfulfilled desire that defines the Dark Lord. Interestingly, the placement of the mirror within Hogwarts itself adds another layer of symbolism. Harry discovers it in a disused classroom hidden under a dust sheet, as though it had been abandoned deliberately. Dumbledore later confirms that he moved it around the castle to prevent students from finding it too easily. The idea that such a dangerous artifact could sit within Hogwarts, accessible to curious children, underlines the theme that temptation lurks even in places of safety. It is not unlike the Forbidden Forest or the Room of Requirement, spaces within the school that test students' ability to resist or confront their inner desires. Another detail often overlooked is how Dumbledore handles Harry's fascination with the mirror. He does not destroy it, nor does he banish Harry from seeing it. Instead, he explains its nature and trusts Harry to learn the lesson. This decision reflects Dumbledore's broader philosophy about choice. As he later tells Harry, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Allowing Harry to encounter the mirror is a controlled risk, a chance for him to grapple with temptation early, before facing the far greater seductions of power and revenge in the years to come. The mirror also establishes one of the series' recurring motifs, the deceptive nature of vision. Time and again, characters are misled by what they see. From the Polyjuice potion disguises to the false visions planted by Voldemort in Harry's mind, appearances in the wizarding world are rarely trustworthy. The Mirror of Erised is the prototype of this theme, teaching that even one's own reflection cannot be relied upon when clouded by longing. It asks readers to question not only what is real but what is worth pursuing. Foreshadowing is woven into this moment with astonishing subtlety. At the time of first reading, the mirror seems like a poignant but contained subplot. Only in hindsight do we see how it anticipates the core conflict of the series, the battle between desire and reality, between obsession and acceptance. Dumbledore's words about people wasting away before the mirror echo chillingly when we remember Voldemort's fragmented life, clinging desperately to a dream he could never achieve. The boy who stood transfixed before the vision of his parents becomes the man who must resist visions of power and revenge. The mirror is the seed of Harry's greatest test. The tragedy of obsession is further highlighted by the parallel between Harry and Voldemort. Both lost their families, both grew up unloved, and both encountered temptations that could have defined their lives. Where Voldemort pursued his vision to the point of self-destruction, Harry learned to let go. His ability to turn away from the mirror, to understand that dreams cannot replace life, sets him apart. In this contrast, the mirror becomes not just a plot device but a moral compass, an early indicator of who Harry is and who Voldemort has become. In this light, the Mirror of Erised is far more than a magical curiosity in the first book. It is a narrative clue placed deliberately by Rowling, a foreshadowing device that speaks to the deepest themes of the series. It teaches that desire, no matter how noble or innocent, can enslave those who cling to it too tightly. It shows that illusions, though comforting, can rob us of the ability to live, and it whispers of the fate awaiting those who, like Voldemort, dwell forever on their dreams and forget the world around them. Number 25, Percy Weasley's Clumsy Owl. Of all the details hidden in J.K. Rowling's books, few are as overlooked as Percy Weasley's owl, Errol. Readers usually laugh at the poor bird, who crashes into walls, drops letters late, and always appears exhausted. His feathers are ruffled, his wings unreliable, and he often needs to be revived before continuing on his task. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Errol famously collapses into a bowl of soup after delivering a letter from the Ministry, so weak that he has to be rescued from drowning. On the surface, this is comic relief. Yet beneath the humour lies an unsettling mirror. Errol's constant failures echo the cracks in Percy's own personality, serving as a narrative hint that Percy himself, like his owl, will falter and stumble under pressure. Percy begins his story as the most ambitious of the Weasley siblings. He is the model prefect, endlessly polishing his badge, reminding his brothers and sisters of rules and dreaming of a career at the Ministry of Magic. He wants so desperately to be taken seriously, to rise above the chaos of the burrow and the reputation of his mischievous brothers Fred and George. When Errol delivers a message late or crashes into a door, it seems like the opposite of Percy's perfectly ordered ambitions. But the more the story develops, the more Errol becomes less of a contrast and more of a reflection. Like his owl, Percy cannot sustain the weight of expectations placed upon him. He too crashes, arrives late to crucial truths, and carries messages broken by his own stubbornness. The symbolism is sharp when examined in detail. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Errol fails to deliver Sirius Black's letter to Harry properly, fainting in mid-flight. Harry notes the bird's ancient, bedraggled look and feels pity for him. Percy's own journey in that book is similar. He begins to isolate himself, seeing the world in rigid categories, chasing rules rather than relationships. He believes that by clinging to structure and status, he can avoid chaos. But just as Errol cannot be made into the sleek, reliable owl Percy pretends to need, Percy himself cannot mask his fragility with badges and ministry dreams. Rowling is leaving breadcrumbs, using the condition of an old bird to signal the future unravelling of the young wizard who owns him. The Weasley family dynamic makes the metaphor even clearer. Fred and George constantly mock Percy, calling him Weatherby when they prank him in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. They laugh when Errol smacks into windows, treating both bird and owner as laughable in their seriousness. Yet, hidden in their teasing is a painful truth. Percy's need for recognition makes him brittle. When Cornelius Fudge begins cracking down on Dumbledore, Percy sides with the Ministry, severing ties with his parents. Molly Weasley's heartbreak is described vividly. "He is not my son. He is no longer welcome in this house," she declares, shattered that Percy could choose ambition over family, and here Errol's role is almost prophetic. The owl who can never bring a letter safely to its intended place becomes the symbol of a boy who cannot deliver loyalty to the people who need it most. One moment that captures this duality is in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, when Errol brings Harry Ron's letter inviting him to the burrow. The owl barely survives the journey and collapses onto the windowsill. Harry feels alarmed for the bird's health, but Ron shrugs it off, saying, "Errol is just old and always like this." This dismissal mirrors how the Weasleys themselves sometimes dismiss Percy's behaviour. His siblings roll their eyes at his pompous lectures, while his parents, especially Molly, indulge his ambition without seeing the fragility behind it. Just as the family normalizes Errol's constant collapse, they also normalize Percy's detachment until his eventual break with them shocks everyone. Rowling often uses animals to reflect their owners' personalities. Crookshanks, Hermione's half-Kneasel cat, is sharp-eyed and suspicious, sensing danger before others. Scabbers, later revealed as Peter Pettigrew, hides his true nature under the appearance of a harmless rat. Errol follows the same pattern. He is not only a mail carrier, he is Percy's shadow in feathers. Every crash, every failed delivery, every bandage around the owl's wings is a glimpse into Percy's own path. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Percy fully embraces the Ministry's lies, sending Ron a cold letter warning him not to side with Harry. The delivery of that message, cutting, late, and cruel, could almost have come from Errol himself, who always arrives battered and broken, unable to bring good news intact. The scene where Percy writes to Ron captures the essence of this parallel. Percy tells his younger brother, "It's high time you learned the difference between behaving like a child and like a man." His words are sharp, stripped of warmth, and designed to wound. Just as Errol's deliveries are so clumsy they sometimes destroy what they carry, Percy's attempt to deliver a message of authority ends up damaging his bond with Ron forever. In that moment, Percy becomes his owl, an exhausted creature, collapsing under the strain of bearing too much weight, incapable of reaching the intended goal. What deepens the symbolism is that Percy never realizes the connection. He treasures Errol because he is his owl, yet he never upgrades him to a younger, stronger bird, even when he could have. This stubborn loyalty to something clearly unfit reflects Percy's own stubborn loyalty to institutions that exploit him. He clings to the Ministry, ignoring its corruption, because abandoning it would mean admitting his ambitions were misplaced. Errol embodies this tragic flaw, a refusal to let go even when the truth is obvious. Harry's relationship with Hedwig throws this into sharper contrast. Hedwig is sleek, beautiful, and fiercely loyal. She always finds Harry no matter the distance, and represents constancy in a world full of betrayal. When she dies in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, her death symbolizes Harry's loss of innocence. But Errol's battered existence already foreshadows the opposite. Percy's slow abandonment of innocence, not through tragedy, but through choice. Where Harry grows stronger through loyalty, Percy weakens through ambition. The owls are not simply pets, they are extensions of their owners' destinies. Even in moments of humour, the metaphor lingers. In Goblet of Fire, Errol arrives tangled in a lamp cord so battered that Harry wonders if the poor bird will survive the trip. Percy, in that same book, becomes pompous to the point of absurdity, idolising Barty Crouch and following his rules blindly. The humour hides the deeper unease. Percy is tangling himself in the cords of authority, just as Errol literally tangles himself in objects he cannot avoid. It is a comedy that carries the seeds of future tragedy. The climax of Percy's arc comes during Deathly Hallows, when he finally admits he was wrong and returns to his family. His apology to Ron is clumsy but heartfelt, a desperate attempt to deliver a message he should have sent years before. He says, "I was a fool, I was an idiot, I was a pompous prat, I was wrong." It is not eloquent, not polished, but it arrives at last. And this final act echoes the way Errol, despite every crash and failure, still manages to deliver his letters eventually. The battered owl always got there, even if late and broken. Percy, too, delivers his loyalty, late, broken, but finally real. The beauty of Rowling's craft is that she embeds these symbols quietly without pointing them out. Most readers chuckle at Errol's clumsiness and move on, never realizing they are watching Percy's fate unfold in feathers. This is why rereading the series uncovers so many hidden threads. The owl that seemed like nothing more than a comic device is actually a living prophecy of one boy's mistakes and redemption. It also deepens the theme of family. Every Weasley sibling has their quirks, but Percy's is the most painful. His distance wounds his parents and siblings more than Fred and George's pranks ever could. Errol, wheezing through the air with bandaged wings, symbolizes that pain perfectly. The Weasleys love Errol despite his flaws, just as they never stop loving Percy, even when he abandons them. In both cases, love proves patient, waiting for the moment of return. By the time Percy fights alongside his family in the Battle of Hogwarts, the parallel is complete. The owl who could never quite manage to fly straight, and the boy who could never quite manage to stand firmly with his family, both find their way home in the end. Errol is never given a heroic scene, but his quiet role as a shadow of Percy remains one of the most subtle yet profound hints in the entire saga. Rowling shows us, through a battered bird, that even those who stumble, collapse and fail repeatedly can still arrive where they are meant to be. Thus the shabby owl that once made readers laugh becomes, in hindsight, a symbol of fragility, ambition, and the slow road back to forgiveness. Errol is Percy Weasley's story in miniature. Broken in flight, late in arrival, yet never giving up until the message of love, of loyalty, of home is finally delivered. Number 26, The Winged Key with a Broken Wing. When Harry, Hermione and Ron enter the underground chambers in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, they find themselves confronted with challenges that reflect deeper truths about who they are. One of the most easily overlooked moments occurs in the room filled with hundreds of flying keys. The description is dazzling. There were fluttering sound like 1,000 tiny birds, but Harry soon realized it was keys. Hundreds and hundreds of them, darting and diving all around the room. At first glance, it seems like just another clever magical obstacle. Yet within the chaos, the key that matters is not the most beautiful or strongest. It is not the one that glitters brightest or soars most gracefully. Instead, it is the damaged one with a bent wing that carries the answer to moving forward. This detail is far from random. It is a symbolic whisper, a subtle clue that Rowling planted early, telling readers something profound about the nature of victory, identity, and imperfection. The broken key with one bent wing is easy to miss when first reading the book, because the scene itself is filled with movement and urgency. Harry mounts a broom and chases through a blizzard of shining silver wings. The text highlights the spectacle. They darted and dived so quickly it was impossible to see which one was which. But then comes the crucial line. It was a large silver one, already crumpled looking, as though it had been caught and stuffed roughly into a keyhole. This single description holds symbolic weight. Out of all the flawless, glittering choices, the path forward depends on something already marked by struggle. It is not the polished option that matters, but the scarred one. To understand Harry's own journey, one only has to look at this broken key. Harry himself is a boy marked by a past that could have destroyed him. He is scarred, literally, with the lightning-shaped mark on his forehead, a constant reminder of his encounter with Voldemort. Like the key with the bent wing, he is not perfect or untouchable. He is vulnerable, and his entire childhood has been shaped by loss, isolation, and hardship. When compared to characters like Draco Malfoy, who gleams with privilege and status, or even Cedric Diggory later in the series, who embodies fairness and charm, Harry does not shine in conventional ways, yet he is the one who fits the lock of destiny. Just as the broken key alone can open the door in the dungeons, Harry's fractured past is exactly what equips him to face Voldemort and succeed where others might fail. The symbolism grows sharper when we consider that the bent key shows signs of having been used before. It was already crumpled looking because someone else had forced it into the lock. This detail mirrors how Harry, too, carries the mark of someone else's attempt at control. Voldemort's curse left him changed forever. Far from being untouched, he has been damaged by dark magic, and yet that very scar links him to the path that only he can walk. The key is imperfect because of what has already happened to it, and it becomes useful precisely because of that. Harry is the same. His brokenness is not a flaw that disqualifies him. It is the quality that makes him the one capable of unlocking the path forward. When Dumbledore tells Harry later that it was his mother's love that saved him, readers see another connection to the key. Love does not shine in the way power does. It is not flamboyant like Quidditch victories or dazzling like spells. It is quiet, ordinary, sometimes fragile. To Voldemort it must have looked broken and weak. Yet it was the true magic that turned the killing curse away. Just as the bent key, overlooked among the sparkling swarm, is the true answer, love, the thing most wizards underestimate, is the real force that drives Harry's survival and ultimate victory. It is striking that Rowling chose a key as the object of symbolism. Keys are meant to open doors, to provide passage into the next stage of a journey. In fairy tales and myths, keys are often symbols of knowledge, secrets, or destiny. The fact that Harry must find the right key among hundreds mirrors his own larger quest, to find within himself the true path forward when surrounded by distractions. The bent wing becomes a narrative prophecy, signaling that the journey ahead will not be guided by glamour or raw power, but by something that looks fragile, even broken, yet is uniquely suited to the task.